Hey everyone, greetings. It's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout, and I am here with one of my personal heroes, Dr. Robert Chandler. Welcome, Dr. Chandler.
Thank you, Naomi. I'm very happy to be here today.
Well, we're always honored to have you. You're one of our leading lights in this historic and providential project that Amy Kelly oversees for us at Daily Clout of the 3,250 highly distinguished doctors and scientists who have read through the Pfizer documents and issued what are now 104 reports. And you personally have broken some of the most important stories, I would say, of the 21st century. You broke the biodistribution study story, or certainly confirmed earlier reports that the materials didn't stay in the body. You broke some very, very important reports of damage to women, damage to their menses, damage to babies, many other important stories. And you're back with a bombshell. And before we dive into that, just give us a little bit of the high points of your illustrious career.
Sure. I had the opportunity to, even though my later career has nothing to do with what I'm going to tell you, when I was at college, I had the opportunity to study with three Nobel laureates in genetic engineering, molecular genetics. And some of the founders, like I call them the three Bergs, Joshua Lederberg, Paul Berg, who was a biochemist, won a Nobel Prize for nucleic acid chemistry, Albert Kornberg, Charles Yanofsky. These were early leaders in this field. And recall that the seminal paper on DNA structure was about 1962. Mm-hmm. And so I got involved about 1967. So that was university. I finished and did an old-fashioned surgical internship in one of the world's busiest trauma centers at Los Angeles County USC Medical Center, mm-hmm. where early part of my career was in trauma surgery, orthopedic trauma surgery. I spent about 15 years in that field, ended up running 2 trauma teams at the county hospital, and got to go through multiple drug wars and saw the Marielitas come to town, the Colombians. And so then the second part of my career was in sports medicine, where I worked with college professional athletes, as well as continued my study of trauma cases, and but not in a medical center capacity. It's more of a reconstructive surgical approach. Then I got this project when you and Steve Bannon announced it. I'm not sure how I got the word, but I filled out an application, and boom, here we are.
Amazing. And you also, I'll just note, represent this distinguished group in many contexts, bringing their findings to publications, to speaking events, and so on. So thank you for being a really well-known now face of this undertaking, which has done so much to save so many lives, and to bring the truth to everybody about what's in this mRNA injection. So we're here today because you and a team of other colleagues, including Ivana Pavic, Dr. Ivana Pavic, who is an MD and a PhD, and Michael Palmer, who's an MD, published with Doctors for COVID Ethics, an article called Pathological Basis of Covax Disease, Cardiovascular Manifestations. And the document is a summary of 2 autopsy cases examined by pathologists Arne Burkhardt and Walter Long at Reutlingen, Germany. And you make the case that these 2 cases are present that demonstrate catastrophic damage to the cardiovascular system from the COVID-19 gene therapy drugs. And both cases had fatal outcomes, one by suicide. So talk about what you found and that you brought to the world in this article, please.
Yeah, first of all, if I may give you a little background. We are working with Dr. Burkhardt's enormous contribution. Dr. Burkhardt was a pathologist in Germany who was in the late stages of retiring when the pandemic showed up, and he had enough contacts in medicine, and the public was aware of him, that people who were concerned about relatives and friends falling over dead and having mysterious circumstances around their death wanted to have second or third opinion on autopsy findings. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Burkhardt stood up, reopened his laboratory, brought in Walter Lang, who was a pathologist at the medical school in Hanover, which is in northern Germany. Mm-hmm. And the two of them did an amazing job. And Michael Palmer, Dr. Palmer, was given this library of data. And let me just map out the size of this project. There's about 400 to 500 pages in Dr. Burkhardt's lab notes. It's in German, so we have to. Michael is German, and Dr. Pavish is Croatian. So we're polyglot, and so we can manage the language. But we have to translate from German. We have to look at about 1,239 images. Altogether, we have about 1,000 pages of text and 1,239 images that are from actual autopsies. Mm-hmm. Now, a little background on what an autopsy is. An autopsy is many things, and it's different layers. The base autopsy is a gross analysis, where you look at the intact body and you open the cavities and you look at the organs. The next level is to take pieces of tissue, and the pathologist has to select pieces to look at, because you're going to process those pieces of tissue and look at them under a microscope, almost always with some type of a staining technique, and the staining that gets very complicated. You then have the next layer where you have immunohistochemistry, where Dr. Burkhardt and others in Germany developed a technique where you could sort out COVID in tissue from vaccine in tissue.
Okay, wow.
And that's spike versus nucleocapsid. And that may come up, you'll see it if you read the article. And just as a background, it's a way to sort out that difference. So the pathologist has to look at these slides and decide, is this basic cardiovascular disease from atherosclerosis? Or is this related to COVID, or is this related to the vaccine? And that is what a unique contribution of this archive of documents. So we're confronted with, do we try to publish the whole thing in total? Mm-hmm. And Michael Palmer is doing that, but that's a long project. Right. And I thought what we could do is look at these cases individually and then put them together. So that's the tactic, and this is the first release.
All right, thank you for that background. And Dr. Burkhardt has passed away, right? So it's all more important for his legacy his work to be brought to the world. So can you give me the headline of what, like in lay terms, what's the who, what, where, when, about what you found in this first report, or this report that we're publishing?
Well, there's a number of things, but I would say the takeaway is this looks like a new disease state.
This meaning what you call Covax, right?
Covax, yes, because there's enough unique features. And many people have heard the term turbo cancer. And turbo cancer is a very aggressive type of cancer that looks unique in many respects. And one of the articles up on Daily Clout was about Dr. Kruger's work in Sweden, where she specifically looked at some of the unique features of turbo cancer. Mm-hmm. What idea that we're looking at and we're putting up there as a hypothesis to try to modify or get rid of with further data is that it's not just turbo cancer, but we have turbo autoimmunity and turbo other things, meaning accelerated disease and generally multi-organ disease. And so we've prepared a table in these two cases that show the number of organs involved.
Can I just jump in before we get into those details? I had never heard the term Covax before till you, I think, coined it. Could you define what you mean by it? Is it a broad umbrella term for all these different new diseases that you're describing that this mRNA injection created? So I'm going to restate this a little because I think it's so important for people to really understand. You're saying, Dr. Chandler, that you've basically, I'm not going to say invented or discovered, it's really more like discovered or identified for the first time and named a new disease, which is really a multiple manifestation or a network of related diseases which involve accelerated degeneration in various organs with various systems. Is that okay? An okay way to summarize what you're saying? Or
yes, and a lot of it has come from looking at. I've looked at hundreds of these slides, Dr. Burkhardt's case, and as a surgeon, we're pretty close to working with pathology because I used to do cancer surgery, and so we would use the pathologists to help us guide our decision making. So for a surgeon, a pathologist is a source of truth, and how do you figure out how the illness actually works? And so looking at a number of these cases, both from Dr. Burkhardt's collection as well as Veer's and publications, there's just a number of unique characteristics which we hope to elucidate and present for discussion. Oh, this is not settled science. I don't think there is such a thing. You put up an idea and then you start attacking it, modifying it. And so the initial idea is that these are multi-organ system, multi-manifestations, and these two cases demonstrate that both in terms of the organ system distribution as well as the nature of the actual damage to tissue. And that's really what we're looking at, is how does this vaccine damage tissue?
So what did you find? So you lifted out two particular people who died, basically, and their relatives wanted Dr. Burkhardt to look at why they died. And he did an autopsy in the way that you described. Did they die of COVID, or did they die of illnesses that were related to the vaccine? I mean, why do you call it Covax? That suggests COVID and vaccine, right?
Well, you'll see that Dr. Burkhardt and his colleague, Dr. Lang, came up with a different term, which we discarded because it was misleading. It was related to COVID. And these are unique, and that's the nature of their work, is showing how unique this disease process is. And so we thought we needed a better name, so we came up with COVID vaccine.
So COVID vaccine.
Yes.
So diseases that, in your view, don't follow from COVID, but they follow from the COVID vaccine. Is that correct?
Exactly. And that's what Dr. Burkhardt's work does. It sorts out, for those that want to know the difference between what COVID does and what the vaccine does. You look at this set of cases we're going to put out, and then ultimately Michael Palmer will be publishing the entire publishable work. And some of these cases, I've gone through about 110 of them so far, Naomi, and there's some that just aren't. Dr. Burkhardt died suddenly and unexpectedly. And nothing mysterious or diabolical, but he was in the middle of working on this. And it's incredible the amount of output he had. It was 79, 80 years old. In fact, it was the evening before his 80th birthday, and he passed away. He drowned. So this is a work in progress, and Michael will be publishing, I think, all of the complete cases as a document.
Sorry to jump in and interrupt. How did he drown? It's a time when uncertainty looms at every point around us, and it's essential to be prepared. Being prepared is not just advisable, it's really critical. And that's where the Wellness Company's medical emergency kit comes in that we're proud to support. Imagine having the reassurance that you're fully equipped to manage any medical emergency, whether it's as commonplace as tick bites or as daunting as the challenges posed by the latest disease of the month. The Wellness Company's medical emergency kit contains vital medications such as ivermectin, emergency antibiotics such as amoxicillin, antivirals, Z-Pak, and more. It's the ultimate solution for being prepared for whatever may be coming up. Rest assured, this kit has been very carefully crafted by the Wellness Company's team of distinguished medical professionals, which include Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. James Thorpe, Dr. Harvey Rich, Dr. Drew Pinsky, and other dedicated, truth-seeking doctors who are all among my personal pantheons of heroes of this time. With their expertise, they've set the gold standard for safety and prevention. Don't wait till the next crisis catches you off guard. Take your health and your family's health seriously today. So click on the link below or head to dailyclouthealth.com to purchase their products. Please use the code DailyClout for 10% off. It's time to find those alternative healthcare communities that actually do care about your future.
Well, I don't have all the details, but he was trying to rescue a family member who was struggling in the water, and his relative survived, but he did not. And I don't really have the details.
Very sorry to hear that. Okay, so moving on to what are these diseases that newly identified, right? Let's put it that way. Diseases do in this article that is novel or unusual or not typical.
Yes, and each case has a certain uniqueness to it, and but looking at the whole family of illnesses, there are other people thinking the same way, because there's a couple articles out there now that have aggregated into organ systems. Like there's a Covax that came out of India. There's another which aggregates all of the neurologic manifestations of these diseases. There's another one on a cluster of renal diseases, maybe 20 to 30 different variations, different manifestations. And I think that's really the bottom line point here, is that biodistribution scatters this material throughout the body, and disease can appear in different areas according to how that gets scattered and how the body reacts to it.
Oh, wow. So you're saying, oh, that's so concerning. You're saying that biodistribution, and just to remind everyone, that means of the lipid nanoparticles encasing the mRNA and the spike protein, right? That's what you mean by the materials, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you proved that in the Pfizer documents, it shows that those materials left the deltoid and accumulated in different organs. Now you're saying that those materials essentially carry disease or carry the mechanism of causing disease. And if they accumulate in the kidneys, they create kidney disease. If they accumulate in the lymph, they create lymph disease. Is that what you're saying? That these materials go through the body and in the organ they accumulate, they create new forms of disease in that organ?
Well, that's what we're trying to map out, is a distribution and a tendency report. And one of the compromises here is that Dr. Burkhardt was not the first pathologist. These cases have been looked at by 3 and 4 pathologists. So they're well examined, but he didn't make the selection.
Okay, but just help me understand what you're saying about how the materials produce the disease when they biodistribute.
Well, let's take, how does it get distributed? There's 3 pathways. There's one that's direct through the tissues, involves dendritic cells and macrophages. It's distributed through the lymphatics and into the lymph nodes and part of the immune system. The third is the vascular system, which will be the most familiar for people. It's picked up and put in the vascular system, now it gets distributed everywhere.
Meaning blood vessels, circulatory system. Is that what you mean by vascular
Veins
system?
and arteries.
Veins and arteries.
So it's taken in by the veins, it's distributed to the heart and pumped out everywhere. So the most common organ system, if we can call it an organ system, and we almost have to go across some medical boundaries here and separate cardiac or heart from the vascular. And we're trying to develop the notion of cardiovascular system, meaning a pump and its network of piping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's necessary now, isn't it?
So that distribution goes through that pump and piping system. So in a sense, that organ takes the biggest first hit. Right. And it's almost ubiquitous in these autopsy cases to find evidence of vascular compromise.
And what does that look like? Is it the lipid nanoparticles? Is it the spike protein? Can you tell? Like, what's obstructing the blood vessels?
It's not obstructing. It's distributing these very, very, a nanoparticle is 10 to the minus ninth meters or whatever the unit was. Right. But it's very, very, very small, which is what distributes it to everywhere. It can penetrate the placenta. It can get into the blood. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, so it goes everywhere. Mm-hmm. And when it gets there, it sets up shop. It makes these proteins, which I don't think have completely been characterized. And then the body begins to attack those proteins. And it does so with the vehicle of a cell called a lymphocyte. So we see common involvement of the arterial system, the heart, as well as the attack vehicle, which is a T lymphocyte. Mm-hmm. And there's been some work recently suggesting that the CD57 plus T lymphocyte, also known as a killer lymphocyte, is preferentially selected during myocarditis, particularly in males. So there may be a genetic predisposition to the disease. So that's probably the bottom line. But then you can have other organs, anything from brain to skin to reproductive organs, and there does seem to be some order to the distribution, although it's very complicated, and we're just getting into this in a systematic way at this point.
So these two people who died, what did they die of, and what damage, in lay terms, did you guys see in the autopsy report?
Yeah, the first gentleman was 61, and these cases were in Germany and Austria predominantly. And it's kind of interesting because it tells you sort of the sociology and some of the psychology, but the husband just falls over dead, and the wife is mystified. She goes through his clothing and finds a vaccine certificate. Well, she did not believe in the vaccine, and he did it on the sly. And so that immediately raised her suspicion, and that's how the specimens ended up going to Dr. Burkhardt. But what he had was something we developed as an idea, that the vascular involvement occurred just outside of the aortic valve. So blood is pumped out of the heart. It's being distributed to the body, goes through the aortic valve, which then shuts, so the blood doesn't pump back into the heart. And right there, a hole develops. It was basically drilled in the artery by these lymphocytes that are chasing down spike proteins, causes a leak in the hose, the pipe. But that part, that very first part outside of the heart itself, outside of the aortic valve, is still within the pericardial sac. And the pericardial sac is this fibrous coating around it's a membrane around the heart. So there's a space between the sac and the heart. Well, that fills with blood under pressure and stops.
Oh my God. Could this explain why so many people are having their aortas almost explode and are having
Yes,
stents put in?
yes. This is an exploding aorta, basically. And the histopathology shows the split, and we can see the process. And we could get into it because we want to have a little context and say that these aren't always fatal. This part of the aorta is a very special part because as soon as the blood leaves the heart, it goes for a very short distance, and then it's distributed to the brain and to the upper extremities. So there's three big pipes that come right off, and off the aorta, right in that area. And the split in the wall of the aorta can involve those other vessels. So surgical reconstruction of this area is very difficult.
So let me jump in there. I'm not a medical doctor.
We're going way too fast. Sorry about that.
Could that mechanism you're describing also explain the myocarditis and pericarditis that young men have sustained?
No, it's related. And that's why, so you have to look at it as a pump and the system of piping. We're dealing with pipes.
We're talking about the pipes. All right, well, let me ask you this. Could what you just described explain people collapsing and dropping dead?
Yes, this is very much on topic with sudden death.
Because what exactly happens with this damage to the pump that causes people to drop dead?
Well, that's what we're looking at, is where do these failures occur? And when we get to the second case, it will help with this notion.
Okay.
But this was a catastrophic failure, not of the pump, but of the piping.
I understand. And let me just ask this, forgive my ignorance. Could the mechanism you're describing also cause brain damage and or strokes because the blood?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. No, that's the amazing thing about, as I told you, I've gone through 110 cases where I'm just looking at the cause of death. I'm trying to catalog this library. Mm-hmm. And so I look at cause of death and how many images there are and just to try to map out the territory. Mm-hmm. And there's almost the uniqueness factor is significant. That's why I think we need a new disease category.
Right. I've never heard of a disease that does what you just described.
Yes, that's right.
It's completely new. And if people, what you're doing is so important, Dr. Chandler, because if doctors don't understand this mechanism, they're not going to understand how to treat it. And literally around me, I've heard of a dozen people having aortic failures of various kinds.
Right.
It's put in, obviously strokes, and obviously the sudden death. So it's very important. Okay, is there more that you want to say about that person's autopsy before we go on to the next person?
Well, let's see. We have elucidated the pathology. We show the organ systems involved. We actually show how the cells aggregate and start to damage the tissues, where they drill into the inner wall of the artery, the middle of the artery, and the outer wall. So this disease attacks all different layers of the muscular aorta. The venous system is less affected. Venous system is more problematic from a clotting point of view, which we can explain how that occurs. But the point is that even with this catastrophic failure, let's say he was one of the 10% that happened to be in a hospital where there was a cardiovascular surgeon that could immediately take him to the OR, put him on a pump, and repair this. He may have another lesion in his coronary artery or another aneurysm somewhere else, because this is a vascular disease.
I understand. That explains
the pipes.
Much. That explains so much of what we're seeing now. How extraordinary. All right, I'm just processing what you found. It's unbelievably important. Is there well, I guess we'll get at the end. I want you to talk to me about, does your findings suggest what people should do to stay healthy, or what doctors should do to treat their patients if they understand this mechanism better? Hey everyone, here at Outspoken and on Daily Cloud, we delve into the intersection of politics,
finance, health, and personal freedom. We never take anything at face value, and especially not from the establishment media or the establishment healthcare or banking cartels. Recently, I've discussed the impact of political upheaval on our financial markets worldwide. The divisive political machine coming out of Washington, D.C. is having a growing impact on our families, our friends, our businesses, and of course, our bank accounts. Inflation is higher than it has ever been. The cost of goods nationwide has been skyrocketing. All around the world, countries are abandoning the US dollar. It's a catastrophe. I wanted to take time to locate an economic expert to help us all understand what's really going on in our country. So I'm delighted to have been connected to Dr. Kirk Elliott. He's a deeply astute economic analyst with 2 PhDs who offers a rich perspective and actual solutions for all of us. His company, Kirk Elliott PhD Precious Metals, offers experts in economics and investments to help us protect our futures. We've got to face it. The government is not going to protect us, so we need to protect ourselves economically. I've spent some time with Dr. Elliott, and I'm excited that he's going to become a regular on my show to help all of us understand how we can best protect our money, our assets from overreaching government mandates and tyranny. Our podcasts are proud to have Kirk Elliott as one of our key sponsors. Dr. Elliott is a trusted name in investment management and wealth preservation, and I personally was very impressed with how transparent his business is in explaining to people exactly what's going to be happening with their assets. Kirk Elliott PhD specializes in helping individuals and families protect and grow their wealth with a focus on precious metals and other commodities as long-term solutions to safeguard assets against inflation, market volatility, and political instability. And again, I just want to stress, for me personally and our family, precious metals, along with other things that the government can't just snap its fingers and do away with, has seemed really, really important as things have become more and more unstable. What's been happening in our country the last few years has really taken a toll on people, and the government has no solutions. So I'm pleased that Dr. Elliott is offering solutions. I encourage you to take control of your and your family's financial future by visiting Kirk Elliott PhD's website or contacting them for a consultation. With expert guidance, individuals can build diversified portfolios that provide hedges against economic and political uncertainty, ensuring a more secure future for you and your family. So we welcome Kirk Elliott, PhD, to Outspoken and Daily Clout, and we really encourage you to go to dailycloutsilver.com and contact them there. And if you call them, say that Outspoken sent you or Daily Clout sent you. Welcome, Dr. Elliott.
Did you want to go to that at this point?
About the second person, because we only have 5 minutes left, and then let's talk about what people can do to stay healthy.
Yeah, the second person was a competitive swimmer, 50-meter swimmer, and at what level, I don't know, but he was in his 20s, I think he was 22. And he had his second BNT, which is the Pfizer, in December. By April, he couldn't swim. His heart was a problem. He was diagnosed as having myocarditis, but a fairly severe case. And this is a year out from his first dose. And his decision was to commit suicide. He bought a gun and killed himself. So, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But what he had was, we can tell from the autopsy and the histopathology and immunohistochemistry, he had vaccine damage of both ventricles, meaning the heart has 4 chambers in the pump, 2 small chambers, which we call atria, and 2 larger chambers called ventricles. It's the ventricles that pump blood either to the lung to get oxygenated, or it pumps oxygenated blood to the body.
Mhm.
And so he had what we call almost transmural, meaning across the entire wall of the artery, scar tissue. And this is what myocarditis looks like later on, and not that much later, right? He's about a year after his first dose.
Mhm.
He also has active disease
Mhm.
in both ventricles. And what is cardiac function? We just don't have those details. You would expect that what we call the ejection fraction, which is when the pump contracts all the way, it pushes out a certain amount of the blood volume that's in that chamber.
Mhm.
And a good amount of blood is 60% of what's there. But oftentimes the ejection fraction drops precipitously when you have scarring in the muscle wall, which
So
only is logical. If you stick a hot poker in the heart and it scars over, it's not going to beat normally in that area. And
right.
yeah,
So just jumping in, if someone, a young person who's used to being athletic, has that kind of heart scarring, how might they feel?
tired, run down, weak, might even have chest pain. So there's somebody that's working at a peak muscular activity, which swimming certainly would qualify. You just can't do it. You just simply don't have the ability to transport oxygen. We in sports medicine we call that VO2 max. And a good VO2 max is like 48, and maybe he's dropped down in the 20s or 30s. He just can't compete. And you imagine being a top athlete, and top athletes are very unusual in terms of what they're able to do physically, and their performance is compromised relatively easily by small changes in cardiac output and oxygen levels.
How tragic. And he was a top athlete, this young man?
Well, we don't know. At 22, to be a competitive swimmer, you would think he would be somewhere in the Olympic category, but we just don't have that information.
I understand. But one way or another, we know this young man's life changed dramatically for the worse.
Yes.
Just the other thing I want to share with you, I may have shared it in the past, is that these studies overseen by China in Hong Kong in 2021 showed that with the second injection, there was an enlarging of the hearts of the rats and visible white scarring on the hearts, visible white patches on the hearts. So that's so heartbreaking. And then what else? So what else do we want to take away from the second autopsy?
The other two pieces to this gets back to the defining the extent of his disease, right? We know he had a bad problem with his heart,
right.
But he also had an aneurysm developing in his aorta, like the first case. And he had an aneurysm developing in his coronary arteries. He had thyroiditis. He had dermatitis.
What's thyroiditis? What's thyroid?
It's let's call it an autoimmune disorder of his thyroid.
Oh my God, poor kid.
He had an autoimmune disorder of his skin. He also had, I think, pulmonary involvement, and we charted all out. So let's just fast forward and say he gets to the point where he has a heart transplant. He's got a new heart. That takes care of the coronary artery aneurysm, but then he might need the same operation the first person did not receive, but we outline what that operation entails, where you have to bypass the weak spot in the aorta with a Dacron graft.
Oh my God.
And now you're left with somebody that's got somebody else's heart. They have a synthetic part of their aorta, and they have 2 or 3 other diseases they have to deal with.
Oh my gosh. So really you're describing something that almost goes beyond Western medicine now, because it's kind of an unraveling or a deterioration of many processes in the human body and many organs in the human body that adds up to a new disease that can't really be fixed with one intervention. Is that kind of what you're describing?
That's right. But you can have single organ manifestations, and you can have multi-system manifestations. And since we're looking at fatalities, we're looking at the more aggressive manifestations. But
Right.
drop back and say, let's reduce the acuity or the severity by 75%. What do you feel like when you have this process going on at a low level, but multiple organs? You're probably not going to feel very good.
Which is exactly what people are describing. They just don't.
And they can't describe it well, and the doctors don't understand the description. Because people don't come in complaining about 3 organ problems,
right,
if they can even identify it. And you have to realize pain is almost a binary thing, that you try to describe it in words, and the doctor tries to understand the words that you describe it in. But these are basically red light, green lights. You get warning signals, and everybody gets to interpret those signals. And when the signals are coming in an unrecognized pattern, particularly when the doctors are not allowed to know these things, and the reason we're publishing the way we do, because we don't think we can get it out in the medical literature.
Jeez. They need it. They need it. You know, doctors need this information yesterday. I mean, that's tragic. Well, we'll do everything we can to shine a light on what.
Can I finish up with the second item? The second piece that we bring out in pulling out of VAERS, the idea was, well, people wake up and they all of a sudden they get these multiple weird complaints. And they get frustrated trying to understand it, working with the medical profession. And there's a devastating psychological effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so we looked in VAERS to see what sort of signal. And basically, you can set up search parameters. And it turns out they don't even record suicides as suicides. They have attempts, behavior, ideation. And buried in those, it was, 500, 600 cases, 700 cases in VAERS. Almost all of them are with the COVID vaccines. Buried in there were 15 fatalities. So they have the completed suicides. They just don't report them. You have to dig them out of the data. And some of them were situations like this, people horribly depressed and having no recourse. Mm-hmm. Others, there seems to be a direct neurologic effect. And if somebody has the time, I think if you look at neuroses, psychoses, anxiety, depression, you'll find signals in all of those categories of psychological manifestation of Covax disease.
Wow. So you're saying the physiological damage to the nervous system is making people depressed, anxious, creating a host of psychological and psychiatric disorders. Is that what you're saying?
Even with, and there's 2 parts of that, even with the organs, multi-organ system, the primary disease, you can get to those distressed psychological conditions. Right. But on top of that, there looks to be a psychopathy, psychological problems associated with the vaccine itself. And we do have up on Daily Clout one article where we looked at sort of an unusual neurologic manifestation, which is probably a property of this vaccine as well.
And what is it?
Well, it was a type of uncontrolled motor activity, because a certain part of the brain that controls that activity is where this lymphocyte invasion occurs.
Does that cause tremor? Because I've been seeing so many people with tremor.
Well, if you look at the postings, there's a number of videotapes or videos that demonstrate what this disease looks like.
No, I've seen what you're talking about.
Yes, right. It's a motion disorder, choreiform motion or jerky motions. It depends on what part of the nervous system's involved, but that appears to be, and that's what the Covan, the Simon in India, collected a group of these neurologic manifestations and published a paper describing them.
Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf. We are excited about our new sponsor, Native Path. So Native Path's collagen formula is scientifically backed to increase bone mineral density, accelerate tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen weak or damaged nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with these benefits? So you can get an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it risk-free. And you really, really should. Are you interested in moving easily and independently without pain or stiffness? Do you want to look in the mirror and see a glow rather than fine lines and wrinkles? So you really need to find out about Native Path collagen, made only with type 1 and type 3 collagen fibers, the two most important types that make up 90% of the collagen in your body. It is completely flavorless and can be added to anything. Coffee, I add it to smoothies. You can add it to oatmeal, and it makes it bioavailable. So it's absorbed more easily and mixes perfectly. And it's kind of an amazing product. Honestly, I just started using it a few days ago. It's a single ingredient collagen, no fillers, no additives, no artificial sweeteners, and they third-party test for heavy metals. But what is kind of amazing is that it really does. It makes me want to work out, which never happens. It has made me feel much more energetic, and it's. I do struggle with the spinal issue, and I honestly have felt much more kind of buoyant and resilient since I began mixing Native Path collagen into my smoothie every day. So I can't praise this enough. I love it. There are 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a no-risk guarantee. That's the kind of product that we at Daily Clout and at Outspoken and now at the Geneva Bible love to recommend. A product that's tried and tested, and I simply cannot recommend it enough. That's getnativepath.com/daily clout and stock up. You will find it transformational. I have, and thank you so much, Native Path, for being our new sponsor, and thank you for supporting our wonderful sponsor, Native Path.
And it can be quite varied. Anything from a motion disorder to memory disorders to just psychosis, frank psychosis.
Right. Well, that's certainly worth a whole other interview with you. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I could talk to you about this forever. This is one of the most important interviews I've ever done. This is some of the most important work I've ever seen anyone do. And so, again, the takeaway is you've identified a new disease, which you're calling Covax, but it's also got many, many sub-manifestations, right? So I think you've got a nomenclature challenge ahead, right? Because don't you need to do like Covax in the kidneys, Covax in the neurological system, Covax in the heart and vascular system? But you've done pioneering work, you and your colleagues, in identifying this with real autopsies, real people who are the tragic sufferers of some of these manifestations. And by doing so, you've allowed a first step to doctors understanding it. Because I can tell you from all the stories I've heard, people are suffering from all of these things you're describing, and their doctors have no idea and are not treating them properly. So just before I let you go, what kinds of treatments, what kinds of behaviors could people engage in now to protect themselves from these kind of multi-organ catastrophes?
Well, that's where we need to understand better how the disease works. And let's divide it into two phases, if you will. One is the acute phase in active disease. That's where the hopes are the best to stop things. How do you control these lymphocytes and whatever cell type is doing the damage? And that I don't know, but we need to study more about it.
Yes, we do.
Once the damage has occurred, almost ubiquitously across all organ systems, what follows that inflammatory phase or the acute phase is scarring. That's how the body heals. It scars.
Right.
There's a few tissues that can reproduce itself. The tissue itself, kidney can do that, liver can do that to some degree. Bone does it remarkably well. Skin does it extremely well. Your blood gets replaced constantly. But most of the other organs heal by forming scar, and we call that end organ damage. There's not much to do for that.
So maybe, I mean, I'm really grasping at straws here, but for people listening, could it help to mitigate this or prevent the worst by, for instance, following an anti-inflammatory diet or staying in very good nutritional and exercise conditions so that your body's immune system is good and can repair the damage before it scars? Is that possible?
Well, that's the point where it's potentially reversible in the inflammatory phase. If you can figure out how to to target the lymphocytes or the cells that are causing this damage and shut it down, yes, you will prevent that damage, and that's the work that needs to be done.
Right.
But if you think of this as the injection phase has passed.
Yes.
People aren't getting this stuff anymore.
Thank
So
God.
what we're left with is more of the chronic conditions, and they've passed through the inflammatory phase. So ideally, you can shut down whatever inflammation still goes on, but then your end organ treatment is going to have to be something to the order of insulin for diabetes, antihypertensives for hypertension,
Right.
and a host of cardiac drugs, drugs for clotting. You get end organ damage treatments, which are more conventional medicine.
I understand. Well, what a bonanza for the pharmaceutical industry to create an disease.
Well, a whole new cluster of disease.
Well, you're a hero, you're a pioneer, and your colleagues are too. Dr. Palmer and Dr. help me pronounce the
Avish.
Thank you very much. And, all of us owe you a great, great debt. You can find this article on Daily Clout. We'll get it out everywhere. And people can also go to your Substack, Dr. Chandler, which is called
Experimental Gene Therapy.
That's right.
And also point people as another source of information to Dr. Palmer's website, which represents the work of the physicians involved with Doctors for COVID Ethics.
Right. And
which is D4CE, I think, if you Google that, or use the non-CIA search engine.
Right. Very important. And we'll have you back to say more. And before I let you go, people also really need to support your work and all of the volunteers by ordering the Pfizer papers from Skyhorse, which will be out in September. Dr. Chandler has some incredibly groundbreaking work there as well. Dr. Chandler, it's always such an honor to speak to you. Thank you for spending time with us, and please come back soon. And thank you for this historic work you've done.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you so much. I'm going to say goodbye now and just read a comment. Thank you. All right, everyone, still recording, and I just want to process what we just went through. My gosh, so important. And I want to thank our sponsor, Native Path. Native Path's collagen formula is scientifically backed to increase bone mineral density, accelerate tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen weak or damaged nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with all of these benefits? And right now, when you visit getnativepath.com/dailyclout, you can stock up on Native Path collagen for up to an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. And every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You can try it risk-free and reclaim your life, rejuvenate your spirit, and glow with vitality. You can move easily and independently without pain or stiffness. You can look in the mirror and see a hydrated glow instead of more fine lines and wrinkles. And I can attest to how incredible the mobility is with this product, because many of you know I have a spinal injury, and it just makes you leap around like a little mountain goat. Discover Native Path collagen made with only type 1 and 3 collagen fibers, the two most important types that make up 90% of the collagen in your body, found in your cartilage, bones, skin, hair, nails, and gut. Types 1 and 3 provide maximum benefits without the need for unnecessary fillers or sweeteners. It's flavorless. You can add it to anything: coffee, smoothies, oatmeal, you name it. Its peptide formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's more easily absorbed and mixes perfectly. So easy to take. And you can get 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee. It is a trusted choice, and there's an 800 number for any questions. A real person is there to help you. You can join their private Facebook community to share success stories, recipes, support each other. So visit getnativepath.com/dailyclout. And again, I just am personally so grateful to this company because they've changed my life. The sleep product, you'll have the best sleep of your life. Brian and I both swear by it. It's so restorative. And the collagen product, honestly, I never want to stop taking it because it has I was limping. It was hurting to walk. I took this collagen product. I don't even understand how it works so well. And I'm just leaping about, hiking, dancing, working out with weights, just so thrilled with this incredible product and our wonderful sponsor. This is me, Naomi Wolf. This is Daily Clout and my Substack Outspoken. Please support us and go to getnativepath.com/dailyclout.